1, 2. One mic check. Yeah, we're good. Nahal miigwech nindinoy maga naduk. Thanks for tuning in. This is Stories from the Land. In the heart of Treaty 3, there is a place. Kanichiwanung is just around the bend from what is known as Manitou ZB. During pre-colonial times, this place was home to over 7 different nations. Back then, there was no border that split the river. There were no boundaries that required passports. It was a place where other nations came to gather, to trade, and to do ceremony, and to honor all those that came before them. Today, it's marked by the burial mounds that remain from that time. Today, it is taking on a new form and in a new way, a new purpose. The addition of a cultural center and roundhouse allowed for new generations of Indigenous people to gather, do ceremony, and honor the ways of those who went before them. It's a sacred place, not just because of the burial mounds, but for what this place represents to Indigenous people today.
There was a man named John Barcy, and he owned this property originally planning to farm it, but eventually he built a really close relationship with the local native population and even marrying one of the women from their community. Seth and I are just kind of running through a practice of our usual tours. When the oldest son, John Barcy Jr., passed away, the family, out of grief, just packed up all of their things and moved down south. When the center was being opened and we were starting to buy back land to build this trail, we actually found that John Barcy Sr. still held the deed to this land, and John Barcy Sr. basically told them he would be willing to just give them the land, and he wanted his son to be reburied in one of the mounds here on the site.
I'm gonna point at it like you can see it.
Yeah, it was agreed. And we got the land here, and now we share his story. Give me the tour experience.
I don't know, usually when we drive up, I'm like, this is our Barcy property, like where all the grass is cut. This is like the hardest spot for me to talk about because I'm so not professional.
Oh. Casey Oster, Indigenous, Manitou Rapids, Donji McMahon, Dotem, Wabanungok, Ngo, Bangietago, Nta Nishnabe, Dash. Basically, I'm Casey Oster. I'm from Manitou Rapids. My clan is the Bear. My Anishinaabe name is Wabanungok, and I'm not very fluent in Ojibwe, but I'm still learning.
And what does your name translate to?
The translation is something close to Morning Star. I remember coming out here for like school trips, like coming right here to the mounds, and I always look forward to those. I'm really grateful that I get a job out here and I get to be out here almost every day. It really does feel like home, and it's so comforting and peaceful out here. I mean, it's beautiful. During our like school trips, I know a lot of my classmates, because we had been here like a million times, they were always like, oh, we're going back there. But I was like, oh, we're going back there? I was always excited to come back out here.
So what's your approach to the tours?
I like to keep it easy to digest for people and like children and people outside of the culture who maybe don't have that context that me and my family have had growing up and coming out here for years. I'm really thankful that I can be out here so often and feel that connection with the land and the history and just everything out here.
Tourism provided a way for the youth to reconnect to Kanichiwanung, but beyond that, it has given them a place of self-identity and connection to culture.
I'm Seth. I'm from Manitou Rapids.
So I'm always curious about young people when they work their jobs. Like, for you, was it like a means to an end? It was like money, so that was good?
For first, it's kind of just a job. You need money, but when you come here, it's like more than that. Yeah. It was different when I first started here because we were under different management, but now it's just like a family.
What starts out as a job for you and a way to make money ultimately becomes like a pretty important part of your life here at Kanichiwanung.
I like that it happened with like my first real job, because I feel like a lot of people my age have a job and they're like, oh, I have to go to work. But I'm like, I get to go to work.
What was your learning like? Like, what was your process like when you first started?
Growing up, my family's never been that traditional. So like, I have like a basic understanding of my culture, but nothing in depth. But working here has kind of like made it better, which is what I like. Should I interview you? Do you like tea?
Tea? I'm a coffee person.
Okay, goodbye. This interview has ended.
That's all you wanted to ask me?
If you said yes, we could have kept going.
All right.
This place started out inspiring my one comic, and from there I really got into that story, and that was kind of when a lot of my artwork started to center more around Ojibwe culture. Native people today don't normally walk around with like 3 feathers in their hair or beadwork decorating their whole body, you know? Or like fringes all over the place. I try to make it very relatable, and occasionally I'll throw in something where it's like very obviously native, but still subtle, that it's not burning a hole in your head with how native it is. I like to make characters that are based off of like how I see people in everyday life and how they dress and act. The thing about drawing and like art in general that draws me to it is the creative freedom that I get with it. Growing up, a lot of kids feel that need to live up to expectations, so art is sort of that one free space of mine where I can just kind of do whatever I want.
A large part of what Kanichiwanung is known for are the ceremonies that occur there. For the community, ceremony, regardless of size and scope, is very important. Art Hunter is a band member of Rainy River First Nation and has been practicing ceremony at Kanichiwanung for over a decade.
We have ceremonies that require sacred fires. And by the sacred fire, I mean that when we make fire, we do it carefully. We don't rush it. We take our time. For other ceremonies, sacred fires like the sweat lodge, there's a fire keeper, and it has to be a male. So the young men need to know these roles because that's the way our elders have taught us. That's the reason why we have fire, is because of the sun. So we honor, that's our grandfather. I'm gonna light the fire now. Once the fire's lit, sacred fire, that's when it begins, the ceremony. There's a fire keeper that needs to watch the fire, keep it going. If you're gonna have ceremony, the tobacco offering is for having those gifts to be able to make the fire, and to the Creator for blessing us with fire and the gifts to make fire. Asking for a good life. Kanichiwanung is what they call it. Buju gitage jiknigo tikntotem. My name is Art Hunter from Manitou Rapids.
The old ones always say, well, everything happens for a reason. How do you think you ended up in a position like this with this project in front of you?
Growing up as a teenager, I kind of, I guess, veered off the good path. Started to forget about the importance of culture, the importance of family. But as I got older, it took many years of alcohol, drugs, living that wild life to come back. 25 years now, I've been,
wow.
I haven't had a drink or a drug. So since then, it's been, I've been coming back to wanting to know more about who I am, learning about the culture, the songs of our community. The songs are important ceremonies.
Your family's been here for a long, long time. You mentioned that you have a childhood memory of coming to this land before it was Kanichiwanung, before there was a center here. Talk about what you remember about this place.
Sometimes we take the boat from Manitou all the way up to belongs to here. And seeing the land here from the waters, you get a totally different view. And I remember as a kid coming up the rapids and seeing those big mounds. I didn't know there were mounds. I said, Mom, what are those? All she told me was, there's people buried in there. And that's all she told me. That's all I remember her telling me.
There are, in fact, several burial mounds at Kanichiwanung. The mounds here are part of a larger mound system throughout the territory that is now linked along waterways that stretch down into the United States and are connected all the way to the Gulf of Mexico via the Mississippi River. Over the years, many of the sacred mounds have been destroyed, but those that remain paint a clear picture of how important these places were and are to Indigenous people and how important it is to protect those that remain.
So, Sonny, this place opened in '95?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is kind of where the main event happened, huh?
Yes.
Where was the stage?
The stage was on the east side over here. We basically used that event for was to launch our development with the mounds and our development with our land claim. And it was to give a message to our community that times have changed and give a message to our neighbors, including the First Nations, including the municipalities, that times are changing.
There's a calm and a peace, and you know, at the risk of sounding a little hokey pokey, there's a spirit, there's an energy here that really lets you know, A, you're not alone. This is sacred land.
At that time, it was a celebration of emotion, because what we were delivering to the community and our neighboring communities is that we achieved a settlement of grievances that went back 80, 90 years. It was a victory for our 7 communities, because we are a legacy of those original signatories to Treaty 3, 7 member communities, 7 leaders.
To be back here now, a little chubbier, a little grayer.
Me too.
It's just amazing. That was, for me, the starting point of not being politicized, but being aware. Now we see that kind of playing out in real time with young people like Seth and Casey, where it's not something they're discovering, it's something they're born with. What you've done with the community through the leadership here and the visioning is you've given that inherent right for young people to be Anishinaabe. They have something they can turn and look to and says, oh yeah, I'm Anishinaabe, you know, and that's a powerful gift that is here.
Yeah.
In the 1990s, the elders, leaders, and youth of this community had a vision of what Kanichiwanung could be. They, of course, knew the importance of this place, and they also knew that they needed to figure out a way to protect it. So, the leaders at the time added the support and protection of this place into the land claim agreement that was being settled at the time, a move that had never been done before, and guaranteed that this place would be protected for generations to come.
My name is Sonny McGinnis. I'm from Manitou Rapids. My Indian name is Ojashkogabo. I'm a member of the Bear Clan amongst my Ojibwe ancestry. As well, my name is Rolling Thunder on my Dakota side, and I'm of the Horse people. I work as Chief Executive Officer for our Economic Development Corporation at Manitou Rapids, Rainy River First Nations. The process of Kanichiwanung Manitou Mounds began soon after we achieved validation for our land claim. We made mention that this was an outstanding issue that needed to be resolved in terms of our burial mounds. We chose to develop these mounds ahead of the land claim negotiations, and it was to rectify the intrusion they made on our burial mounds and to ensure the safety, the protection of these mounds would be there forever. And so once that was attained, then we began the negotiation of the settlement for our land claim. Canada offered to fund the construction of our center here. These mounds and the center, Kanichiwanung, was undertaken with a commitment that was made on behalf of Parks Canada to fund the operational costs in perpetuity.
That word, perpetuity, meant that this would ensure the land, the center, and the mounds themselves would be protected and continue to be protected. It was a smart move.
We were lucky with having both sides of government willing to do this at the same time. I'm always grateful for that help we got because we needed it.
Thank you, Jean Chrétien. I'll never say that again, by the way. That is the one time I will ever say thank you to Jean Chrétien. Thank you for this, Jean.
This is our lookout, and you can look out.
Oh my God, I say that during my tours too. For obvious reasons, you can look out.
There were 7 reserves along the river. In this area here is where one of those reserves sat, and when the assimilation happened, it was really sudden, hey?
Yeah.
The government basically was like, you need to grab your things today and go to this other place. And because of this rushed move, there are still plenty of artifacts and tools and items still down where the property used to be. God, can you imagine that though?
Yeah, I was told that like, they were like, you're either gonna move out today, and if you don't, we're gonna burn you out tomorrow. So like, can only imagine how much stuff was probably destroyed in that, the people who would have died.
We started buying back a lot of the land that would have been part of those 7 communities.
Given the generations of ancestry that is present here, the connection to the land is strong in many ways.
I've heard elders say before, no matter where you are, no matter who you're with, you're never alone.
Yeah.
And it's comforting to kind of think about like your ancestors are always with you, or
Yeah.
how about these trees are ancestors?
Oh yeah.
That's how I feel here. How do you feel?
I think that's kind of part of what makes it feel so comforting and homey almost, is just knowing that like this ancient connection here to the land. Every time I'm out here, it feels like I'm connecting to that in a way. I'd like to tell you about a dream. It was from the point of view of a young boy, about 19 maybe. And he was a little sickly, but he did take medicines, traditional medicines that were given to him by the family that took care of him. At one point, his family that cared for him had to go somewhere. The father told the boy, "We'll come back to you and you'll see us again." The boy was left in the care of a second family, and it was a mixed family of natives and non-natives. And at one point, he's telling a girl from the second family, his father had told him that you'll know we'll be back when you see a dream catcher. And as he's telling this girl this, he looks up into the sky, and just above where the trees open up to the trail, there was like an arrow that shot up into the sky and looped around to make one circle and then a second circle inside of there, and a dream catcher formed. And he knew that this was the dream catcher his father had told him about. And he looked down, and just at the opening of the trail where the trees started to part, he saw his family and his father arriving, several on horseback. And I remember seeing the father jumping off of his horse, and me as the boy, I ran to him, and we ran to each other in the field and met about halfway, and I could feel all these emotions that weren't necessarily my own, but I felt them as if they were. And I remember feeling the embrace, and it was like nothing I'd ever experienced in my life.
Across Canada, it shouldn't surprise you when you learn you have an Indigenous sacred site in your backyard. These are Indigenous homelands, after all. Kanichiwanung, being one of Canada's most important sacred sites, is a teacher and a spiritual being for all of us. It teaches us, it shares with us, and it connects us to who we are and where we are from.
I think that anyone that comes here and spends any time at Kanichiwanung, it changes you. And to see these burial mounds next to this river, you know, in this place, you understand what the elders mean by since time immemorial. Being here and feeling the energy here and the spirits here and the ancestors here and that all the helpers that watch over this land, I think I understand a little bit more about what they mean since time immemorial. And to the community here of Rainy River First Nation, you know, they have stepped forward into this role, you know, with guidance from their elders and ceremonies and long, hard discussions. They have stepped forward into a role of caretaker of this place. And it's amazing to see these young people take on that responsibility for the community. And I think for us as Anishinaabe people, that's us at our best, being guided by our ancestors and taking up that work. Miigwech for giving us this time here in this beautiful territory. Naha, miigwech.
We didn't lose everything. They took away 7 of our reserves, the government, and we still have this place, and we're still here on Manitou ZB. That feels good to me.